Hello and welcome. My name is Nicholas Rain. Welcome to the Rcb Radio Sports Show. And I'm joined today by Seamus Hayes. Seamus doesn't need any introduction. He's been involved in sport, I'd say, all his life. Welcome, Seamus.
Thanks, Nicholas. Thank you.
Seamus, we the second weekend of Hurling Championship fair over the weekend. So we'll just go through the games as they came up there. And the first one up was Ballyea and Broadford, and a big win again for Ballyea, 122 to 13 points. So it's the second big win for Ballyea.
Yeah, they're looking good, and a lot of people have tipped them. The return of Gudgie O'Connell, Cahill Doohan, Stanley Ian, from their first title-winning team, has strengthened their squad big time. So a lot of people have tipped them, and judging on their form so far, they certainly are going to be in with a big shout. I suppose Broadford was their first outing in this year's championship, having had a bye in the first round. They brought it back to one-score game midway through the second half, and then Tony Kelly just took over. And he fired over some magnificent points from different angles, showing again what a class player he is and his value to the team. I suppose going forward, there might be a small bit of concern in relation to a few injuries. Now, Jack Brown didn't play last week against Broadford because of a hamstring he picked up the previous week. Cahill Doohan left the field of play with a shoulder injury, and I suppose that would be a concern for them. And this weekend, they'll have quite a number of their players in football action with Clondigad and with other clubs, because Pierce Lillis is captain of Curraghtair this year, and he's a key member of the Ballyea lineup. And Martin O'Leary and Stanley Ian play football with Kilmahel. So, Cahill O'Connor with Coolmeen, and he went off injured as well last week. So, I suppose that's the downside of it, maybe, that with all these games coming on with injuries. But certainly at the moment, they look to be a very strong side, Ballyea.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at the fact that they won it last year without Tony, it'll just tell you now they have they're going to be some force to stop us. We'll move on to the next game then, Seamus. Then that was Scariff and Clooney Quinn, and that was a nice win for Clooney Quinn. They needed a win after last weekend. They needed to get a few points on the board, and 116 to 13 points. They'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, they certainly will, because there was a lot of concern amongst their supporters as to how they might fare this year, because they've lost a lot of the players that were so central to the team over recent years, like Killian Duggan, Conor Harrison. They're no longer part of the setup, and so they had to blood a lot of young players, and then they had a number of players like the Corrie brothers, Mike and Jimmy, were out through injury, and so they certainly had to introduce a lot of new players. Their two inter-county men, I believe, stood out. I didn't see that particular game, but Brian Taylor in particular, who I suppose you nearly have to put him in contention for the find of the year, if you like. He's been so good with club and with county in the first 6 months of the year, and now he's transferring that form onto the club scene, and I suppose the availability of Peter Duggan to the club is massive. So from that point of view, it was a very good win, and puts them in a good position. Now they face Éire Óg next time out, which will be a big game, because if Éire Óg will need something after last week. But it will be an interesting game as well for the Clooney Quinn manager Tomás Corbett, who played all his hurling with Éire Óg. And
that's right, yeah. So the next game up then was Smith O'Brien's and Wolf Tones, and my God, Wolf Tones had a huge win here, 217 to 12 points. Smith O'Brien's coming up from intermediate, and already finding it hard at this level. It's a big step up from intermediate.
Yeah, I think you put it in a nutshell there. Stepping up from intermediate to senior is a big step up, and the experience of playing as senior is massive. And for players stepping up, they realise quickly what they need. Will Tones, without Aaron Shanahan, let it be said, who wasn't available, or somebody said he was away in holidays, but he wasn't playing anyhow. But Éire Óg Wolf Tones are building on a good season last year, we'll say, where they did a lot of groundwork building for this, and the same management team, Ray Divney, Alan Cunningham is in as the senior coach there this year, and he's a very experienced man, as we all know, and a key part of the Limerick backroom team. So Wolf Tones are building nicely. They have a good mix of of youth and experience there. So I think that they could cause an upset or two yet in the campaign against maybe more fancied opposition. But it was a very good win for them, and they'll be very happy with that.
Yeah. And of course, I'd just like to acknowledge very sad news. It moved towards last weekend as well with the passing of Barry Luckman's, Mr. Luckman. Very, very, very sad. For all the GA community in particular, we'd like to pass on our condolences.
Yeah, that's right. Both to Shannon and to Six Mile Bridge, because she, she was Bridget O'Halloran from Six Mile Bridge.
That's right, yes.
Her family are very much involved in the club there as well, so it was a very sad occasion for both clubs.
Absolutely, for the Bridge as well. Thanks, James, for that. We move on to Newmarket and Fergus versus Whitegate. This was a closer game maybe than the scoreline. Well, Whitegate went down a man, and I think it probably had a little bit of a telling on the Bairn, but I think Newmarket were probably the superior team anyway. 18 points to 9.
Yeah, they were. I think you summed it up well there as well. They were level at half time, and in the opening minute or two of the second half, Whitegate lost a man. And obviously 14 against 15. It's very difficult to manage at times, and Newmarket were obviously very determined to get something out of this one, having lost the first round a week earlier. This was Whitegate's first outing in the campaign. So from that point of view, I suppose Newmarket needed to win badly. But Whitegate will be disappointed. They're noted battlers. They have put a lot of effort in, and I suppose being the man short, was the difference really on the day.
Yeah. This game then was the first round for both Crusheen and Aina Kildemona. Aina Kildemona coming out on top in the end, 118 to 112. They'll be happy with that, last year's county finalists.
They certainly will, because they have to do a little bit of rejigging. A few of last year's team, for one reason or another, weren't available. Kevin Hare is out through injury. Again, the inter-county men, I suppose, had a big bearing on this. Like David Fitzgerald, the captain this year, very influential. Aidan McCarthy, great to see him back. Playing again, having missed so much of the year through injury. Top scorer, got some very good scores from frees. And the free tackle is very valuable in any team. He got the goal, showed his experience, and showed what he's capable of. It wasn't the greatest of games, but the better team won on the day, and I think Aina Kildemona will only improve from here. That'll bring them on a lot. Yeah,
they'll need to improve down the line, but I suppose the first day is about winning, really, isn't it? And
it is, and they introduced a couple of new players like Sean Rinn, coming out of the minor scene. Very impressive, and they have had a lot of good underage teams in recent years, and if they can blend a few of those in with the regulars, there will be a force again. Yeah,
and Shane Woods, he played minor a few years ago there. He blended in well, a wing back, strong man, very good on the ball, a very, very, very great addition as well. So happy days for those. Air Oak and Kilmaley. Kilmaley came out of the blocks flying it, and they were up. I think they were up 8 points at half time. They were 9 points up at one stage. It was, I suppose, if there was ever a game of two halves, this is probably it. Back came Air Oak in the second half, but they left themselves a mountain to climb, and in the end, Kilmaley got a second wind, and they were able to see it home on a scoreline of 318 to 315. I think they were probably better value than that, but they'll be delighted with that win anyway.
Oh, they certainly will, and they were the foreign team, maybe, I suppose, going into it, which maybe it was a little surprising that so many people were making Air Oak so strong favourites. Now, Air Oak have been in the semi-final for the past 2 years, and they had what appeared to be their strongest team practically on duty from the off. But Kilmaley have done well. They were very strong in the first half. 3 first half goals helped them to that big lead. In fairness to Air Oak, they regrouped at half time. They responded well. But I give a lot of credit to Kilmaley for having been rattled a bit midway through the second half. They were able to regroup, and they finished very strong. And I suppose on another day, maybe Kilmaley or Air Oak's final goal might not have been allowed. There's strong suspicions of a square ball. So I think Air Oak or Kilmaley were deserving winners. But again, Kilmaley have a lot of potential, and they will be there or thereabouts come come the semi-final, final stage of the year. As will Aero probably yet. Aero, they have a very settled looking team. But there's a bit of pressure on now, and they can't afford to lose another game, really. If they're going to qualify from the group, and they have the difficulty of trying to manage two teams now, because their footballers are the defending champions, and I'd say about 2/3 of the players are common to both teams. So I suppose that's an issue they'll have to deal with. But it was a most exciting game, probably the best of the games I saw over the weekend, because it was so competitive, and there were different stages in the game when each side thought that we're going to pull away.
Absolutely, yeah. Clarecastle and the Mills. This is a game I enjoyed, because Clarecastle came out there. They were 5 points to 1 up, and you wondered if they were going to pull away altogether. But the Mills, then they had an upsetting week, I suppose, and change of management and all that. But they came, and they made a real game of it and took the lead towards the end. And Clarecastle had to come back, a late goal, a brilliant free from Bobby Duggan, put him right back into it, and followed up with the equalising point. So it was a topsy-turvy game, I suppose.
It was, yeah, and I suppose Cocallan's Mills followers will be asking, if they had Jacob Lernan in the starting team, would it have made a difference? He came in at half time. I think he finished with 1-4 or 1-5. Following for the half hour that he played, so they'll be talking about that. But again, the Bobby Duggan, a strong player, very good free taker, captain of Clarecastle, stepped up to the mark when needed and scored that goal from the 20-metre free, which brought them back into it at a time that they looked to have lost their way a bit. And I suppose overall a draw was a fair result. It keeps the pressure on, because both had lost their first round. So there's still a lot of pressure on both teams, and they have tough games to come against. I think they both have to play Broadford and Cratloe. So, they're going to find it tough, either of them, if they're going to qualify from the group. But I suppose that's what the championship is all about.
Yes. I suppose it'll either be an invaluable point or won, or an invaluable point lost, maybe at the end of the day. We'll have to wait and see on that one. The next game we were expected to be the game of the weekend, but it didn't materialise. 6 Mile Bridge, far superior on the day. We have Ballier down as favourites, but by God, I think 6 Mile Bridge are really setting a mark on their first 2 games there. It shows how good Newmarket were when you see how Fecal, who were a very strong team and had a great opening game, and 6 Mile Bridge just kind of pushed them off, really, I think.
Yeah, the Bridge looked exceptionally sharp, I suppose. Sean Stack is an experienced manager. He's been around a while. He's had a lot of teams under his wing, from Clare, Tipperary, Limerick, and has done well with all of them. So, he knows what's required, and he's able to have teams sharp and have them ready at the right time, and he knows when to rest players and when not to rest players. And they have a great mix going. They have the experienced players of the Maoris. Big boost for them this year is Jamie Shanahan, who missed all the league. And at one stage, the word was that he mightn't be able to play because of injury, but he has been flying in the first 2 games. Centre forward, and have Cathal Malone, Shane Golden. Now these fellas are all flying and in great form, and that's a powerful half hour now. Cathal Malone, Jamie Shanahan, and Shane Golden, and they'll trouble all opponents. So they will certainly be there. Fecal will certainly be disappointed, because having ground out a well earned point in the opening game against Clonlara, they were very, very flat. You have to give credit to the Bridge for how good they were, but Fecal were very, very flat, and certainly will have to go back to the drawing board ahead of their next game.
Yeah, I think Fecal probably threw in the towel, once they knew they weren't going to win, and maybe the scoreline flatters the Bridge a little bit. But I suppose the one bright spark was Ever Culligan got a point from play, which you don't see too often in Cusack Park. It's a big pitch, so that was a bright spark for them. But certainly 6 Mile Bridge, they have 4 weeks of a break now, which really gives them time to settle in and get all their ducks in line before their next round. But they're almost home and hosed now as far as getting into the next stage of the championship.
Correct.
Yeah, the intermediate championship now, Seamus, we'll just have a quick look at it. St. Joseph's Jura Bearfield. St. Joseph's Jura Bearfield against Killanena. That was a big win for St. Joseph's.
It was, yeah. I think the second half they got well on top. The first half, I understand, was poor, low scoring, 8 points to 4 at half time. But St. Joseph stepped up a good bit in the second half and pulled away to win comfortably. They're obviously one of the favourites for this title. Having been a senior club for most of life and with a lot of good young talent coming through, but they're also finding that it's not as easy as the public might think, to bounce back up straight away. They have a lot of good young players, but they had a good win. They have 2 wins under their belt now, so they're in a good place going forward.
Yeah, the next game, I won't say it was a shock or anything. Absolutely not a shock, but maybe raised eyebrows. 4-11 for 6 Mile Ridge, 1-19 for Corofin. A big win for the Bridge there against the fancied Corofin side. Yeah,
great win. And speaking after the senior game on Sunday, Sean Stack referenced that game and how important it is to the senior team, to their senior team, as the breeding ground for players. But I've said from the word go that the Bridge will have a say in the destination of the intermediate title. In the past decade, they did win an intermediate title and they had 2 teams at senior level, and they're quite capable of doing the same again. They have an awful lot of players, and quite a number of the players in that team have experience of playing at senior level and have just dropped back down. So they're going to have a say in the championship, who will make it difficult for anyone to come up against.
Yeah. So, and in the next game then, another surprise, I think, O'Gonlow overcame Tulla and by 116 to 14 the scoreline. That says a lot about O'Gonlow, I think. Maybe it says a bit about Tulla as well, but
yeah, it certainly does. O'Gonlow, they've struggled, I suppose, over the years for numbers, and there were times when they were really struggling to field the team. But the past couple of years, they have had numbers available. I suppose the COVID situation has meant that a lot of lads who would normally be travelling away weren't able to travel. But Michael Sheedy, who's a dyed-in-the-wool O'Gonlow man, a great club man, has taken charge there for the last year or two, and he guided them to the Junior A title last year, brought him back up to intermediate level, and he seems to have a great spirit going there on the team. Tulla would have gone into the game as hot favourites. Now, in fairness, Tulla have injury problems, and they lost David McInerney at half time. A big loss to him. Derek Curry was coming back from a serious injury. It was his first day out, in quite a while. And they're trying to build a new team. They have some young fellas like the Whittycombs, who started in the school in St. Joseph Tulla's Hartley Cup success. But trying to blend a lot together, is not that easy. And Jim McInerney is working hard to try and get a good squad together now. They had a lot of wides, I understand, in the first half, and would not have been flattered if they had been up at half time rather than down.
Yes.
To that type of a game. But when O'Gonlow get their heads, their tails up, they're hard to stop, and to create a great buzz for the next round of games in the intermediate championship. That O'Gonlow have beaten one of the fancied sides.
Yeah, O'Gonlow is one of the smallest clubs in Clare. A lot like my own half of the club when they were Kildare on their own, and to go up to intermediate and get that against a good Tulla team, it was a great result for a small parish.
Oh, certainly a great result. And if you go back about, 15 years ago, O'Gonlow had a great run at senior level. In the era when the Ford brothers were at their prime. They had some great results, and I remember a fantastic game against a high-flying Wiltones team where they beat them in a replay. Side in Broadford, and they got to the knockout stages of the senior championship back then. But then these players, obviously, their retirement came and they had to build a new team, and they're coming nicely now again, O'Gonlow, and every other team will be sitting up and taking notice after last week's result, and they'll be saying they can't take these fellas for granted.
Absolutely. And the next up in was Aina Kilnamona and Bodyke, and Aina Kilnamona will be happy to have drawn with Bodyke. It's Aina Kilnamona's second team, so they'll be both will be happy. I'm sure Bodyke will be happy to have gotten a point out of that one. So in the draw and the finish after.
They certainly will. Bodyke had a good run in the league. Sean Dial is managing his native club there this year, and he seems to have lads well focused. Aina Kilnamona, a bit like 6 Mile Bridge, they have a good mix for their second teams, fellas that have played at senior level and have young fellas coming through, and there'll be no pushover for anybody either. So there are two teams that you'd expect would be fighting to be in the knockout stages of the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Rouen then and Partine, it was a reversal of last year. I think Rouen beat Partine last year. It'll be disappointing for Rouen, the big noble parish, against Partine. 326 to 320. A great result for Partine.
A great result for Partine. I suppose they've been threatening a breakthrough for much of the last decade. They've been there or thereabouts, and they've disappointed when most was expected. And they have they're on the Limerick border, I suppose, and I suppose they're fighting for first call from fellas who might be going to rugby or, inside Limerick City and things. So from that point of view, it was a good result. It's good to see Jack Kerwin, a young fella who played with the Clare Minors only a year or two ago. He played in midfield for them and finished the game with 111 to his credit. It's good to see that he's maintaining the challenge, and on that basis, you'd expect that he probably would be in line to be called up to another Clare panel in next year or so. From that point of view, Rouen will be disappointed. They've lost their opening 2 games now, so they need something special if they're going to qualify from the group. They certainly have to win the remaining 2 games and hope maybe other results go their way at this stage. But in fairness, injuries have played a role, for them this year. Conla Hannafin is out for the year, key player. Killian Ryan is struggling. He's only played part of the 2 games because of injury. So that's a difficulty as well. And I suppose that's something that all clubs are struggling with this year more than any other year. All clubs seem to be picking up a lot of injuries, soft tissue injuries, leg muscle injuries, etc. So whatever it is this year, whether it was the way training has changed or something, but there's something different from other years. Clubs are picking up so many injuries. So that's a concern as well.
Yeah, and you'd imagine it would be a big improvement given the fact that they had a lot of time and knew when the championship was coming and all that. But I suppose that's for another day anyway. But it's an interesting one. And Tubber then a huge win against the Mills. Remember, the Mills put up a huge score last weekend. They scored 13, I think, last weekend. They managed 13 points this time around, but Tubber 328. That's huge scoring from the North Clare team.
Yeah, Tubber, they've been so close over the last couple of years. They've contested a number of finals. They've been there or thereabouts. The core of their team is still there. The Clive and Blaine Early still key players. And they have players from kind of a lot of North Clare area. John O'Culligan from Ballyvaughan, and Donald McMahon from Michael Cusicks. They work well together there. I suppose a big boost for Tubber in the last 2 weeks when this championship got underway was the return of Pat O'Connor from injury. Pat has been dogged by injury over the last couple of years and missed all the inter-county season. But at club level, very experienced, back in at centre back. And I suppose for a number of the Tubber players, it's kind of do or die at this stage. They've been battling there for a while for to try and win an intermediate middle. So they won't be far away this year. Ivan Conway, former Partine club player, living out there now, taking over as manager, and seems to have got everything going well for the club again this year. So they'll be seen as one of the fancy teams for this title.
Yeah, absolutely. So was the whole, and there's a bit of a breakdown because the eagerly awaited football championship is starting this weekend, and there's 25 senior games or 25 matches between senior and intermediate, and going on all over the county. Rogue county champions are taking on St. Brecken's on Saturday in Cusick Park. So that's a big game. There's a lot of games on, Seamus. I'm not going to go through them all. We won't have time. We'll devote next week to football. Yeah. But
you have six. You have 6 senior games this weekend. And I suppose the Rogue Brecken's game would be seen as pick of the bunch. Rogue as champions, Cusick or Brecken's after winning the Cusick Cup just a couple of weeks ago. Beaten the semi-final last year by Rogue when they were probably expected to win, and I think that'll attract a lot of interest. That game, both teams have a lot of lot of very experienced and exciting young players involved. And I suppose another game that's attracting a lot of attention is the meeting of West Clare neighbours Kilmurray or Brecon and Donegbeg. Donegbeg, after maybe a couple of lean years, had a good run in the Cusack Cup, got as far as the semi-final. So they're back with an in-house management, if you like. 3 men who have had great success with Donegbeg: Kieran O'Mahony, Padraig Gallagher, Conor Whelan. Are guiding their fortunes. John Keane is managing. So there'll be a fair drive from Donegbeg, and they'll have David Tubridy back now for the championship, having he missed in the league because he was involved with Clare. Kilmurray, you just can never write Kilmurray off. They're building a team every year. They've been thereabouts consistently for the last 10 years now. They're without Keelan Sexton this weekend, I suppose. A big blow because he's away in the States. A big loss to him, but still it has the makings of a great game. There's local rivalry, there's everything involved. So
absolutely. There's another little more watering one there as well that I'm looking forward to: Lisa Casey and Kilmahel.
Yeah, another local derby, neighbours meeting. They've met a couple of times in recent years. Kilmahel had a good run last year after a few lean years. They got to the quarter final and really put it up to Kilmurray or Brecon, losing out by just one score. Yeah. I think it's 113 to 13 points. Lisa Casey have been in the last 2 semi-finals. Did well 2 years ago, unlucky to lose by a point to Kilmurray or Brecon after extra time. Disappointed in the semi-final last year, were comprehensively beaten by Donegbeg. They have some good young talent coming through. Whether they have enough of a blend between experience and youth remains to be seen. But that will be an interesting game, no doubt in the world about it. Because
absolutely. And Clonaghan in his time, and then I think is the last game.
It's the other game in the park, and you have Cratloe against St. Joseph's. That's another one, and so certainly plenty to look forward to. One weekend, you've Corofin making their debut there, to return to senior ranks, and they're playing an experienced Milltown team, so plenty of excitement in store for the weekend.
Absolutely, and we'll go through all the winners and losers next week. Seamus, that's about it, I think, for this week. Thanks very much for coming on. I'm delighted to go through all those games there. Are you enjoying the championship at this time of the year, Seamus?
I am, yeah. I am, certainly. I know there's a lot of different debate about it, but I would be very strong on the view that the club players are entitled to their day in the sun. And people will argue that the All Ireland's being over is a blow to promotion of the game. I don't think so, because I think particularly TG Carr, and I see the advertising it last night, they're showing games every weekend from this weekend on. So there'll be no shortage of games being shown on television, and most counties are streaming their games now as well, which has proven very successful. So, I really think that is the way forward, that the club players and the club scene has to be given its day.
Yeah, it also gives a little window there for the women's sport to have their day on their own as well, like in an earlier time of the year as well.
It certainly does, it does, and I think that a small bit of a tweak in between the various groups, can make sure that they all get their time, their limelight, and get their day in the sun. But I think you have to. For too long, to me, in my view, the club player and the club scene was kind of pushed into the background, and the club scene has an awful lot to offer. Yourself from going to games. The interest in sport and the interest in championship time is absolutely massive. It's the main talking point practically in every parish, every day of the week. And I even see there this week the amount of publicity that the start of the Kerry Championship got last weekend. The Clifford's club, Fossa, playing in junior football. Like the amount of publicity they got for their opening round last weekend, and then the way the lads were back after the All Ireland the previous week. So there's a massive interest in sport, and the club scene has a lot to offer, if it's promoted properly.
Yeah, it can only improve the calendar, Seamus, and it can only improve the club scene as well. 98%, I think, of Gaelic players are just play for their club, which is I think it's the ultimate honour. I mean, it's great to play for a county, but there's so many teams from junior, intermediate, senior, junior B, and they're as you rightly say, they're entitled to their day in the sun. the All-Ireland football final is over now, Seamus. There's a big talking point about Shane Walsh going to leaving his club. I was up there in Clanburn actually. The bank holiday Monday. I was in Clanburn, small village, very rural area, Kilkerran, just over the road from it. What's your feelings on a player moving to? It's a hard question maybe, but what's your feeling on a player moving from a rural area into a big club like Kilmacud Crooks?
It disappoints. It really disappoints me. I think that players, need to stay with their own club. I always quote the example. Over the years, you go back to the late 60s and 70s. I suppose one of the standout players in intercounty hurling was a fellow by the name of Jackie O'Gorman, as you know. Yes. And at that time, Cratloe were junior hurling club. Now, many people would have said he would have blossomed maybe or done better if he moved to a senior club. But Jackie was a Cratloe man, he's a Cratloe man, and stayed with his club and was instrumental in helping them move up the ladder. And look at the way they're now. I think I hate to see players leaving their native club to go to bigger clubs. Now, I know it's happening a lot. The big clubs in Dublin, they have a lot to offer, and in fairness to them, they do a lot of work and they provide a lot of employment for young players, by getting them involved in coaching and giving them jobs as coaches and things. Yeah. But, it's a massive blow to the Galway club that Shane Welch is with if he leaves. It's a massive blow if it happens. It's like a death in the parachute. He's a key player. He's a key player to the club, and I would be hoping that players like him, would do everything in their power to lift their club and bring their club up the ranks rather than going to the bigger club. Yeah. That would be my view. Now I know others will say you have to take circumstances and travel and work and all into it, but he's a student at the moment. I understand. So while you have to study and do your work to get on in life, but it's easier for students to have more time on hands to manage training, and he was able to come up and down all year for to assist his county, and it's the same with Clare and with other counties. Any club that loses a player of stature like that, it's a massive blow to them. So I'd be very strong in players being urged and being maybe stopped, if you like, from moving. That they should stay with their own clubs.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Seamus. I remember Michael Keane, the late Michael Keane, died recently. Rest in peace. Michael used to come down from Dublin when he was based in Dublin. He was in college in Dublin for about 4 years or whatever it was, maybe longer, I'm not sure. But he used to often come down his motorbike to play with Kilnamona, a junior club. David Fitzgerald was based in Dublin there for a long time, and he always came back down to Clare and back down, never left his club. If you could do it all those years ago, Michael Keane could do it. Travel is much easier now, and it doesn't take the toll as it is. But that's it. I suppose the man has his reasons, as well. But he's 29 years of age, in the prime, I suppose, of his life now. I hope he finishes it out with Clanburn and Kilkerran, and but I have no say on the matter anyway. But I do agree with you totally, Seamus. So that's it, Seamus. I think we'll park it there for this week. There's a lot of discussion on that. There's a lot of to and pros on it, but we look forward to the weekend anyway. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of lads coming down from Dublin this weekend to play with their clubs around Clare.
Oh, they're certainly will, and they do it every week. And even, I often think of the great Clare team of the 70s that won those leagues and were in Munster finals. Like the powerful half-back line of Gerald Nan, Sean Stack, Sean Hare. They were all based in Dublin at the time, and I'm sure there were plenty of clubs looking at them and would have loved to have got them, but they never left their home clubs, at that time, and they stayed with their clubs and continued to be involved in their native county, obviously a love of their home county. And, a lot of those could have gone, and the same with a lot of the footballers at the moment. Keelan Sexton is based in Dublin. And I'm sure he'd be picked up by many of the big clubs in Dublin, such as his ability. So these fellas, I think they have a pride in their own place, and they love coming back to their home county. And I think that's important. I think it's important to, that it stays that way. But look, there may be different reasons that we don't know about. But I'd hope that Shane Welsh would stay with his native club and native parish in Galway and continue to play the football that has been playing. You know, he's surely in contention for Player of the Year.
Yeah, there's a great saying, I think I've heard a long time ago. It goes something like this: the streets where you lived is the place where you'll die. Wherever you are in the world is the place you'll probably come back to before you head off. Anyway, Seamus, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks very much. I appreciated your company, enjoyed it very insightfully again, and we'll do it again soon, Seamus.
Okay, Nicholas. Talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye.